Ich hatte eine Kamerad, besser. I had a comrade. It's about, I was in a battlefield. My friend and I, a bullet came flying in the air. Was it for him or me? Then he gets hit. Then he says, I had a comrade, better you never find. And then about him losing it. Some reason I remember the tune as a kid. I used to hear the Germans play it. Which shows in time of war, we all lose. Everybody dies.
Charles Rotmil arrived in the United States at 14 years old, having survived the Holocaust and World War II. His father was an art broker who had been born in Warsaw. His mother was born in Hamburg. They settled in Strasbourg, France, but in 1938 they moved to Vienna, where his father was caught up in the violence of Kristallnacht.
Men came into the apartment, beat him up, and took him away. Then when he was released a few months later, he got exit papers. And we left Vienna in 1938, and we went all the way into Belgium.
They attempted to leave Belgium in 1940 when German soldiers invaded.
We walked, and we got on a train, and what happened was that the train derailed. Sabotage, and 50 people died and 150 were injured, including I was one of them, my brother also, but my mother and sister were badly injured. We had lost my father on the road. We didn't know where he was. So at the hospital, they told me that my sister had died. And my mother, I saw her in the hospital, but she died about a month later.
Rotmil was taken back to an occupied Brussels, where he was reunited with his father.
And then I was caught in a raid one night, early dawn, where Gestapo stood over me with a gun to my head. And we were interrogated, and everybody in the house was interrogated. And some of them were taken on a truck. But they let my brother and I go. And then my father came and said, you live with me now. And we lived with him in an apartment. But in 1943, with the final solution, my father was arrested for good. And I have documents that I found telling me that he was taken on a train to Auschwitz.
After first hiding in a group home under a false name, Rotmil was taken in by a Catholic family in an arrangement brokered by a monk that Rotmil called Père Bruno.
He had a network of an operation, very complicated. He had people who make false documents. He had people who had money. He had people who could put you up. He had people with transporters. So I ended up with a family. They had 5 children. And then I became one of their child, you see. And he took it upon himself. They could all have gone to prison. All of them. The children questioned that he took a risk of their lives as well as his own by taking me in. It was really, in the true sense of the word, a Christian act. When Père Bruno asked him if he could take me, Père Bruno told me, there was a long silence, and then after a while, he said, well, Mr. Loix, and Mr. Loix said, when are you bringing him? I was waiting for you to tell me when you're bringing him. He didn't even question that he had to hide me.
But Rotmil was able to leave the house.
I went to school. I had blue eyes, and I was blonde. So I look about as neo-Nazi as possible. And I had no problem looking like a Christian. That's another joke about the stereotype or what a Jew looks like.
Because he was taken in by the Leutz family and assisted by Père Bruno, Rotmil survived the war. He says his most memorable day was the day the tanks came, liberating Belgium.
We were told that the Americans are coming. We knew they had landed in France. We came on the roadside, and you could hear the rumbling of the tanks. It was like a low, and we could hear it. And finally they came, one after the other. And the men were on top waving at us. They were even throwing us chocolates and all kinds of stuff.
Rotmil planned to go to Palestine after the war, but through a newspaper article, he was connected with an aunt and uncle who lived in Peekskill, New York. At 14, he had only 6 years of formal education. He crossed the Atlantic in what had once been a luxury liner.
Below deck was a huge room with bunk beds because it was used for the troops. And it was still partially, had not yet been decommissioned as a luxury liner, but there were still people on it. While I slept in the steerage on the floor on a mattress. And I was with 11 children with a mentor. And it was a lot of legal stuff going on to get under the French quota. I think at the time it was 400 French per year.
On December 11th, 1946, Rotmil arrived in New York City.
I was given a pair of shoes, and I didn't wear them. I saved them from when I stepped off the boat. So I put the shoes on, brand new pair. They gave all of us a new pair of shoes, leather shoes. And then I remember waiting for a turn to get off. They were clearing the papers. And there was a man who stood there with a huge 10-gallon hat from Texas. And he was hustling telegrams. You could send telegrams home. And I remember being shocked by that kind of exposure and behavior. I was also shocked by looking at cabs, yellow cabs. I'd never seen anything but black cabs. And I'd never seen cabs painted yellow. I mean, everything seemed so loud, the clothes and everything. It's a bit of a shock. And of course, New York is a shock. The skyscrapers at the Empire State Building, all the skyscrapers, was a shock. But when I arrived to Peekskill, it was more like a regular town.
Rotmil remembers being very homesick and crying nearly every day.
But it was very traumatic coming here if you don't know the language and you don't know how to deal with people. There is definitely no consciousness of what it's like for some people to be European, to be from another country. I'm very aware, there's certain customs. For example, I was used to shaking hands in the morning. Say hi, bonjour. It's ordinary. So when they didn't want to shake my hand here, I felt offended.
Rotmil now works as a teacher of foreign languages, a lecturer, and a writer. He attended Temple University in Philadelphia, but left college to marry. He later moved to New York City and found work as a photographer's assistant to Alan Arbus, the husband of famed photographer Diane Arbus, and began making money at photography. In the summer of 2016, he was planning a photography show for the following October. As a Holocaust survivor, there is one thing he must struggle with each day: the loss of his mother and sister in Belgium and his father at Auschwitz.
There's no way to deal with it. There isn't. A lot of anger.
For Immigrant Voices, I'm Keith Ludden.